Welcome back. We got some more questions, and as you might notice, I realized I should prepare a little bit for these questions, and so I prepared a little for these questions, so I'll be babbling less than last time. But let's get right into it. First question I have here is, can God create a rock so heavy that he cannot lift it? Now, there are two ways to answer this question. First way, no. God can't create a rock so heavy that he cannot lift it. Does that mean he's not all-powerful? No, he's still all-powerful. Then the second way to answer the question, which will explain how he's still all-powerful, is to reject the premise of the question, to say that's a nonsense question. A rock so heavy that an all-powerful being cannot move it is a word salad. It's not a real thing. It's just something that appears like a thing to our mind because we have imperfect and limited intelligences, but it's not actually a real thing. It's like saying, can God make a square circle? Or can God make a married bachelor? Or can God schmiggle, schmaggle, schmuggle? Like, those are all just nonsense things. They don't actually exist. They're not really things. So God cannot create a rock so heavy that he can lift that. God cannot make a rock so heavy that he cannot lift it. It's not because he lacks any power, but rather because, well, he is all-powerful. He can only do things that are logically possible. It doesn't make sense to say God could do things that are not logically possible. So, there we go. Next question. If God knows everything, including what I will do in the future, how can I have free will? So, God does know everything, including what you do in the future, and you do have free will. So how does this work? Well, God is timeless. He's outside of time. So it's not like he knows what you're going to do before it happens, or even during it happening, or even after it happens. He just knows in the eternal moment that he exists in. And that's obviously an analogy. But timeless, he exists outside of time. He sees the beginning from the end. He sees what action you'll choose because he's outside of the box of time. And a way you can think about it that I've heard is imagine you like football. You recorded a football game on your DVR, or maybe the World Cup, and you're excited to go home and watch it. But your friend, he's also into football. He tells you the score, and you say, oh, come on, man, I was going to watch that when I got home. Now I know what's going to happen. You kind of ruined it for me. But you sit down and you watch it anyways, because why not? And you already know what's going to happen. You know the end result. But that doesn't mean the people playing the football game don't have free will anymore. No, you're just outside of the DVR. You don't exist within the DVR. You can see the beginning from the end of the DVR recording. That doesn't change the fact that the people, obviously they don't literally exist in the DVR, but it doesn't change the fact that when they were recorded, they had free will. You just can see the beginning from the end. And by analogy, you can think of God like that. So yes, we have free will, and God knows what we will do in the future, but he knows it because he sees it from the eternal moment, not because it's already determined, and he's just letting time play out like some kind of play or something. Next question we have here. Why does God send people to hell? It seems sadistic. And just so for our younger audience viewers, because I know my brothers watch this, sadistic means like you take pleasure in somebody's pain. So why does God send people to hell? It seems sadistic. So if you want to speak technically, we send ourselves to hell. It's said that if we go to heaven, it's due to God. If we go to hell, it's due to us. So hell is primarily due to our actions. It's not due to God's actions. Hell is just the absence of God. God offers us salvation, and he makes it pretty easy. I mean, you literally just have to not prefer hell over him, and you can go to heaven. I mean, obviously, there's a little more to that. You get baptized, have faith in him, repent, believe the gospel, etc. But essentially, that boils down to not preferring hell over God, because the absolute bare minimum to be saved is you have faith in God, you're baptized, and then you just don't commit a mortal sin. And if you do commit a mortal sin, then you go to confession, and even if you don't love God, even if you don't really want heaven, if you're just afraid of hell, that's still a valid confession. And obviously that's not ideal. We don't want people just confessing because they're afraid of hell. We want them to confess ultimately because they love God. Because, confessing because you're afraid of hell is kind of like the attitude of a servant, afraid of their master beating them or something like that. And confessing just because you want the reward of heaven is kind of like the attitude of an employee just wanting their boss to pay them. But that's not what we're called to be. We're called to be children of God. And the attitude we should have is, I love God. I don't want to offend my Father. So that's why I confess my sins. I'm sorry. I want to repent and change my life because I don't want to offend my Father. So that's a pretty low bar, though. You just have to be afraid enough of hell to not want to go there. And so you confess your sins to God. God makes the offer of salvation very easy. And if you're not sure whether or not you should have faith in him, you just pray to him and he'll reveal to you in time that you'll, in a way that you'll understand. And say he doesn't give somebody the gift of faith super early in their life, but maybe later in their life. Well, guess what? You're only judged based off the graces you're given. Christ says, to him's given much, much is expected. To him's given less, less is expected. So it's not like God's going to say to you, how come you didn't have faith in me before I gave you the grace to have faith in me? That's not going to happen at the last judgment. God will say, he'll judge according to the actual graces he was giving you. So you don't need to worry about that, although you should, remove the obstacles towards believing in God. And when I say have faith in God, I don't mean like just faith that he exists, because you can know that without having faith in him. You can just know it through reason, because it's, to some people it's obvious. To me, it wasn't obvious when I was younger, although it's obvious now because I've thought about it a lot. But what I mean by faith in God is just mean like trusting what he teaches through his church primarily. That's what I mean by faith, and that he loves you and wants to save you. But I mean, you can also discover that he loves you through reason as well. So why does God send people to hell? Technically, he doesn't. We send ourselves to hell. That would be the answer. It's because he respects our free will decisions. And to force people to go into heaven would kind of be an analogy of that would be like a man who really loves a woman. And so even though she keeps saying, stop, I don't like you, leave me alone, he keeps sending her flowers and chocolates and keeps asking her out on dates. And she just says, stop, just leave me alone. And in this life, God will keep sending us flowers and chocolates. But when you die, if you keep saying, leave me alone, he'll leave you alone. He's not a creep. He'll take no for an answer eventually. But he knows what it will lead. It'll make you unhappy because we're made for God, and you'll be eternally unhappy if you're without him. So that's why he tries to warn you in this life. That's why he dies on the cross, to make it so obvious how important this is, how severe your sin is, and how deep his love is for you. Next question. Why does God create people that he knows will go to hell? So this kind of combines the previous two questions. He knows what we'll do in the future. So he knows that the person that he creates, if they go to hell, will ultimately go to hell. So why would he create that person to begin with? So there's multiple ways we can answer this question. First way, regardless of your view about God's knowledge, is you could just say, well, it's a good thing for God to make them at all to begin with. And it's similar to, I have a child. I know my child is going to suffer, but I'm still going to have a child because it's good for him to exist, regardless of his suffering. That's just a good thing. And you can say it's a little bit different when you know that they're going to suffer eternally, but it's not like there's no good things in hell. In hell, there's still natural goods like existence, obviously, and they'll still have knowledge and consciousness, and those are all good things. So it's not like there's no good things in hell. It's just no supernatural goods in hell. Only natural goods are in hell. Although many theologians would say that the souls in hell would rather not exist than be in hell. But you can think of that primarily just because they hate God so much, and God is existence, and that's why they rather wouldn't exist, even though it's a good thing to exist, because God is good. Another way you can answer that is you can reject the premise that God knows somebody would go to hell before he creates them. Because again, think about it. The result of a free will decision is only known by God, what do you say? In traditional thought, is only known by God because he sees it. But the result of a free will decision that never occurs, it sounds like a logically impossible thing. Because a free will decision, what makes it a free will decision is it's you choosing it with your will. It's not something that can be predicted. So the result of a free will decision that never occurs, you can't predict what that result will be, even if you had infinite knowledge. Not because, there's some lack of knowledge even in the infinite knowledge. No, it's just because it doesn't make sense. It's a logically impossible thing, I would say. The result of a free will decision that never occurs, that's just nothing. That's not anything. You can't know that because it's not anything. There is no result of a free will decision that never occurs. And so you can say, if God didn't create somebody, then he wouldn't know whether or not they would go to hell because he never created them. So they never choose whether or not to go to hell. So he doesn't see it. That's not to say that God's in a state where he's in heaven right now. He's like, should I make this baby or not? I don't know. No, obviously God's not like that. He exists again in an eternal moment. So he's already made all the decisions he will make for all eternity. But when we think about it in a human way, you can, and by analogy, think of it like before God chose at the beginning of time, which again, this is an analogy. There is no beginning of time that God existed in and made all his decisions. But again, analogy. At the beginning of time, God chooses all the people he's going to create and the people he's not going to create. And when he chooses all the people he creates, then he sees the result after he chooses it. But the people he chooses not to create, he can't see the result. And again, that's an analogy. God exists in an eternal moment. He's already made all his decisions for all of eternity. And even when I say already, that's still technically an analogy as well. Because, again, he doesn't exist within time, so there is already, or there is no already, or there is no before, after, or during for God. But anyways, you can think of it like that, And this view that God knows this knowledge of the results of free will decisions that never occur, that kind of knowledge is called middle knowledge. I think middle knowledge is logically impossible. I don't think it exists, so I don't think God knows it because I don't think it's real. But some people, they think middle knowledge is real, and so they think God knows middle knowledge, and he knows what you would do in every situation, even if it never occurs. I think God knows all possible things and all real things, but the results of a free will decision that never occurs, I don't think that that's a possible or a real thing. It seems like word salad to me. Anyways, so that would be the basic answer. You can say, well, because it's still good for them to exist, that's why he would create them. And then I would additionally say, well, he can't know whether or not somebody would go to hell unless he creates them to begin with. And again, speaking by analogy. Next question. How can we know that God exists? So part of what I prepared is I looked in the Catechism, the main things it lines up for how you can know God exists. So here are just some examples. I'm not going to go into full-fledged arguments because I'll make videos about that in the future. I mean, I'll do one argument for you. But here are some two main ways you can know that God exists from the Catechism are the physical world and the human person. So for the world, it says from movement, from becoming, from contingency, the world's order, and the world's beauty. You can come to a knowledge of God as the origin and end of the universe. And then it says from the human person, that our openness to truth and beauty, our sense of moral goodness, our freedom, and our voice of conscience. So I'll just do a very quick, simple argument for God's existence, the moral argument. So we naturally observe that morality is objective, just like I can see with my eyes light and different wavelengths of light that we see as color. I can intuit with my brain that certain actions are morally wrong, like murder, just killing somebody needlessly and sadistically torturing people. That's objectively wrong. Even if somebody didn't believe in God, they would still look at people torturing children and they would say that's wrong. And they're not just saying that they don't prefer that to happen. They're saying that it's an objective fact that that's wrong. So if you're going to believe in objective morality, then there has to be some kind of objective ground for that morality, because if all that exists is space, time, and matter, morality wouldn't be able to be objective because space, time, and matter can change, and there's no unbreakable piece of paper with all the moral rules on it. No, there would have to be an immaterial, unchanging moral law would have to exist. And because it's immaterial, another way you could say immaterial is spiritual, by spiritual just meaning not material. So if there's this unchanging moral law, then is that something God obeys. Well, this is this is just something interesting now I wanted to talk about. I'll mention that after. But anyways, there's this unchanging moral law. Uh, and because there's this unchanging moral law, you can say that that law is God. Uh, and that would be a basic argument for God's existence. I don't find that the most convincing one, to be honest. I think there are much more convincing arguments for God's existence, but that's a very practical one. Because if you're going to live a normal human life where you act as if morality is objective, which is how not even most, it's just how everybody acts, except psychopaths, which psychopathy, by the way, I said that wrong. Psychopathy, by the way, is a legitimate mental disorder. It's like just some people are blind and they can't see light. Some people are psychopaths and they don't have that moral intuition, like they don't feel guilt and stuff. And that doesn't disprove the moral intuition. It just shows some people are blind. Just like blindness doesn't disprove light. Anyways, what I wanted to mention that I thought of as related to that question is some people say, okay, well, if there's a moral law, but can that be used as an argument against God? Because if there's a moral law, then either God has to obey that moral law, so there's something above him, and then the moral law would be the ultimate cause of everything, not God, or God is above the moral law, and then he could change it, and he can make murder right, and he can make compassion wrong if he wanted to. And the answer to that dilemma, that's called Euthyphro dilemma, it's in one of Plato's writings. Socrates is asked this question by Euthyphro. Euthyphro being the name of a guy. The answer to that question is neither of those options are correct. God is the moral law. So God doesn't define what the moral law is, like he's above it, and he can make it whatever he wants it to be. And God isn't below the moral law and has to obey this code above him. No, he is the moral law. He is existence himself, and in being existence himself, he is all goodness himself. And so whatever contradicts the perfections of his nature would be immoral. Whatever is in line with the perfections of his nature is morality. So that's that. The next question we have here is, it seems that faith is foolish. How can a truth-seeking person have faith in anything? And like I mentioned, I prepared a little bit, so I just want to read from Aquinas for this one, because I think he has a really good answer. Faith is not foolish, but someone might object that faith is foolish to believe what is not, but someone might object that it is foolish to believe what is not seen, and that one should not believe what one does not see. I replied that this difficulty disappears if we consider the following points. 1, because our intelligence is imperfect. 2, because our knowledge is limited. 3, because life in this world would be altogether impossible if one were only to believe what one sees. And 4, because God's miracles prove the truth of the things which faith teaches. So let's go through those points one by one. So faith is not foolish because our intelligence is imperfect. If we were able to, by ourselves, to know perfectly all things, visible and invisible, it would be foolish for us to believe what we do not see. But our knowledge is so imperfect that no philosopher has ever been able to discover perfectly the nature of a single fly. We are told that a certain philosopher spent 30 years in solitude in the endeavor to know the nature of a bee. And just for context, philosopher is a very broad term, so it can include scientists in this. If our intelligence is so weak, is it not foolish to be willing to believe about God only what we are able to find out by ourselves alone? In fact, this is condemned by the words of Job. Behold, God is great, exceeding our knowledge. So basically he's saying there, our intelligence is very weak and imperfect. So if you only believed about God what you could discover with your intelligence, that would be foolish. Next point, faith is not foolish because our knowledge is limited. Another reason why faith is not foolish concerns expertise. If an expert were to make a statement in his own particular branch of knowledge, an uneducated person would be a fool if he contradicted the expert for no other reason than that he could not understand what the expert had said. Now, without a doubt, the intelligence of an angel surpasses that of the greatest philosopher, far more than the intelligence of the philosopher surpasses that of the most dumb person on earth. Therefore, a philosopher is a fool to disbelieve what an angel says, and a much greater fool if he disbelieves what God says. He is condemned in the words of Ecclesiasticus. Many things are shown to thee above the understanding of men. So basically he's saying, if you know God's speaking to you, it's dumb to not listen to him, because he's the ultimate expert about everything. He can neither deceive nor be deceived. And then next point, faith is not foolish because life in this world would be altogether impossible if one were only to believe what one can see. How can one live without believing others? How is a man to believe that so-and-so is his father? A man has to believe others in matters that he cannot know perfectly by himself. Now no one is to be believed as much as God is. Thus those who will not believe the statements of faith are not wise, but foolish and prideful. As the apostle says, he is proud, knowing nothing, and I know whom I have believed, and I am certain. And it is written, ye who fear the Lord, believe him. I just want to add a little more context, because he mentions in here, how is a man to believe that so-and-so is his father? And you might say to yourself, oh, well, now with our technology, we can do DNA testing, and I can see that he's my father for certain. But actually, you can do the DNA testing, but you're still just having faith in what the scientist says because you didn't do the test yourself. And you'll say, okay, well, I learned genetics and I can do the DNA test myself. Say, okay, that's great. Well, it doesn't look like you did the experiments for all the discoveries about genetics. You're just having faith in all the scientific discoveries and experiments that came before you. And really, if you want to avoid having faith and discovering who your dad is, you would have to repeat all the scientific experiments with genetics so that you could know with certainty that everything taught in the textbook is true, learn how to do DNA testing yourself, and then do the DNA test yourself. And then make sure nobody ever gets involved in the chain of custody so that they could change things so there's no faith involved in anything. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Faith is just a part of life. You have to believe people. That doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to be true. Obviously, people can lie to you. But when it comes to God, God cannot lie. So having faith in God is the most rational thing to do. And then the last reason, faith is not foolish, because God's miracles prove the truth of the things which faith teaches. Thus, if a king sends a letter to which he has attached his seal, no one will dare say this letter was not written by the king's orders. And just for context, in the past, a king's seal would be like a very intricate stamp in the wax of the letter, so it would be very difficult to copy. So if you had a letter with the king's seal, it was pretty much proof that that was from the king. They didn't have easy access to technology like we do today, where we could probably recreate a seal easier. But even today, I think that would still be difficult. But obviously, back then, it'll be very difficult to recreate the seal. But anyways, continuing. No one will dare say this letter was not written by the king's orders. Now it is plain that whatever the saints have believed and handed down to us concerning the Christian faith is confirmed by God's seal, which is to be seen in those works which no mere creature is able to do. That is, the miracles by which Christ confirmed the doctrine of the apostles and of other saints. And if anyone says that nobody has seen those miracles done, I reply that it is a well-known fact, related in pagan histories, that the whole world worshipped idols and persecuted the Christian faith. Yet now, behold all, the wise, the noble, the rich, the powerful, and the great, have been converted by the words of a few simple poor men who preach Christ. Now was this a miracle, or was it not? If it was a miracle, then you have what you asked for. If you say it was not a miracle, then I say that you could not have a greater miracle than the conversion of the whole world without miracles, and we need seek for no further miracles. Accordingly, no one should doubt about the faith, and we should believe what is of faith even more than the things we see, since man's sight may be deceived, whereas God's knowledge is never at fault. So that's Aquinas' answer about how faith is not foolish, and I would pretty much say the same thing, because you might think faith is just a religious thing, but it's actually something involved in everything. You have to have faith in almost every area of life. It's just something that's unavoidable. And it's good to ask questions so that you have a firm faith. And when you do ask those questions, you realize that when you know that it's God speaking to you, the only proper response is faith. That's the only rational response. If you're not sure if it's God speaking to you or not, then yeah, it's fine if you're asking questions to try to figure it out. But when you do know it's God speaking to you for reason, the only proper response is faith. Next question is, what should Christians think about ghosts? I don't want to go too much in detail because honestly I'm not that knowledgeable and I'm not going to remember everything. But generally, I'll just frame this different. I'll frame it big picture first. So Christianity has different subcategories. So you have Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants. Now, many Protestants, they will reject the existence of ghosts for some reasons because, or really to be more accurate, they'll reject the existence of like apparitions or like people's souls appearing to you. Because what does ghost mean? Ghost comes from the German word for Geist. And the German word Geist is their word for soul. That's just how they say spirit. Geist in German is spiritus in Latin, which in English is translated ghost, spirit, soul, these are all very similar things, technically have different meanings. But in this Christian sense, ghost is just a human soul. So technically, Protestants do believe in ghosts, although many Protestants will reject that human souls can appear to you. But early Christians and throughout Christian history, Christians have never had a problem with the fact that human souls appear to you. And most of the time, this is regarded as souls in purgatory asking for prayers because they're being purified on their way to heaven and they would like our help. Just like we can pray for people on earth who are on their way to heaven being purified from sin, you can pray for the people in purgatory because God doesn't abandon you just because you died imperfect. He'll finish the work he begun on you. So generally, they're souls from purgatory, although they could be souls from heaven as well. You know, angels in heaven appear to you, and there's nothing that says a human in heaven can't appear to you. And it could also be a soul from hell. And there's actually an argument to be made that some of the exorcisms in the New Testament were not possession by demons, but possession by a human soul from hell. I'll link more information about this in the description below, because to be honest, I don't remember it very well. This is not something I think about that often, just because it's kind of like one of those rarer, cool things that it doesn't really change my worldview, whether or not, ghosts were real or what I mean by ghost is whether or not ghost apparitions occur. Okay, so next question. Why are dinosaurs in Australia never mentioned in the Bible? So the short answer is the Bible is not a book about everything. And technically dinosaurs are mentioned in the Bible. I mean, we started calling dinosaurs in the 1800s. Before that, we just called them dragons. I mean, you can read, like St. Augustine, he has a passage where he's writing about this giant dragon tooth he found. And really, it's just a dinosaur fossil, but he doesn't have the words dinosaur or fossil. He just thinks of it like, oh, this is from the dragons that walked the earth before the humans, which is very similar to our concept of dinosaurs. So it's not like contrary to the Christian faith to think that dinosaurs existed. But the main reason that it's not in the Bible is just because the Bible doesn't cover everything. I mean, people ask a lot of questions similar to this, like, where did Cain and Abel find their wives? It's like it just doesn't say in the Bible. Like, there's multiple possibilities of where they found their wives. It could have been from another tribe of humans. They could have mated with their sisters if God permitted that back then for some reason. But we don't know. It's just not, doesn't say it in the Bible. And if it did say in the Bible, then you'd ask where their kids got their wives from, because it would just create an infinite regress of information God would have to include in the Bible. God doesn't put all the information in the Bible. The Bible is about salvation and theology and man's relation to God and religion and God's calling to man. God's love for us. The Bible is not a science textbook. Science is great. Obviously, science was created by Christianity. It's one of the great results of God's revelation to us. But it's not primarily about science, because that's not the first thing we need to know to live a good life. The first thing you need to know to live a good life is what is good and what is evil. So that's what the Bible's about. It's not about Australia or dinosaurs or geography, etc. Next question we have here is, why are we punished for Adam and Eve's sin? Short answer is we're not punished for Adam and Eve's sin. And technically speaking, Adam and Eve sinned and we contracted original sin from them. But when you call it original sin, that doesn't mean like you're personally held accountable for that sin. That's not what the church teaches. I put aside the reference for that in the Catechisms as well. One moment for me to pull that up. See, this is what preparation does. I can give you a better answer. So it says, this is paragraph 405. Although it is proper to each individual, original sin does not have the character of a personal fault in any of Adam's descendants. It is a deprivation of original holiness and justice. But human nature has not been totally corrupted. It is wounded in the powers proper to it, subject to ignorance, suffering, and the dominion of death, and inclined to sin, an inclination to evil that is called concupiscence. So there you go. We're not actually punished personally for Adam and Eve's sin. Now you will say, well, if we're not punished for Adam and Eve's sin, what the heck is the whole thing with original sin? And we do suffer because of Adam and Eve's sin, because we contract original sin. I like to think of it as a disease. That's the more appropriate analogy since it's not a personal fault of ours. So if somebody had parents that were drug addicts and they were born with a heroin addiction, that's not the fault of the baby at all whatsoever. And when God judges that person's life, he's going to take into account the fact that they were born with a heroin addiction. And so it was pretty much impossible for them not to be addicted to heroin, and very difficult for them to stop using heroin even when they were a baby. But that doesn't mean, just because they're not personally held accountable for it, that they are free from the heroin addiction. Like, personal guilt and the actual circumstances of your life are different things. You can your parents can be driving a car and they can drive in a way that's not safe and then get in a car crash and you die. And yeah, that was their sin because they were neglectful, and you suffered for it because it caused you to die because you died in that car crash. But that's not your fault. It's just a circumstance of life because of the natural order that God created. And the upside of this unity that we have in the human race, basically the ultimate answer of original sin, is there's this unity in the human race. So Adam and Eve's sin, because they're the heads of our race, is the effects of it passed down to us. The upside of that unity is Jesus Christ's work for us on the cross. His sacrifice on the cross can also be passed down to us because of that unity. So the original sin that passed to us through Adam is also, or the order that makes the original sin pass to us through Adam is also the order that makes grace pass to us through Jesus Christ. So we might not like it, but this is the natural order that we're made with. And if you think about it, it's hard to imagine how it could be any other way. So yeah, you could say God could have made the world the other way, but that's not the way that he made the world. And I don't even know if he could have made the world another way. I don't know if there would be some logical contradiction in that. So I was thinking about this question a little bit more, and I don't think there would be a logical impossibility involved in God making it so we all were born with original holiness and justice. It would just obviously destroy the unity of the human race that we have now. And the reason I think it's not logically impossible is because all you'd have to do is just make somebody normal as opposed to broken. And we know that he's already done that for Mary, Jesus' mom, because she was conceived without original sin. And then obviously Jesus was conceived without original sin as well. Although you can argue that wasn't miraculous because he didn't get it from his mom, because his mom already didn't get it. But, it had to start somewhere where somebody wasn't contracting original sin. So I don't think there would be a logical contradiction involved. I just think God has chosen this order for the world because there's greater goods as opposed to the alternate order where you can see, people wouldn't have original sin, but there would be less goods that could be achieved in this world. And again, God's ultimate priority is not like that people have a great time. God's ultimate priority is love. He wants love to exist. So whatever results brings about the greater love would be the one that he chooses, at least I would say. Also, even if you're not Christian, you can just observe the world and you can see that the idea of original sin is true. It's very obvious to everyone that something is wrong with us. We are broken. We do things that is widely regarded as not good. Even if you don't have a concept of sin, you can still have a concept of justice and say, yeah, pretty much everybody does things that are not just. They're not giving people what they deserve. And we see this as a common condition of the human race. So even if you don't agree with the order that God has set up, you'd still, even from like an atheist perspective, agree at the core with the concept of what original sin is, because it's plainly obvious to everyone that we're all broken and we need something to be healed. But yeah, this was just a little editor's note going back to the regular commentary. And then the last question we have here: why did Jesus have to die for our sins to be forgiven? It seems like God is bloodthirsty. So short answer, technically Jesus did not have to die. God's all powerful, and he's the one, that we sinned against. And just like if somebody sins against me and, they haven't done anything to make up for it, but They just told me they're sorry. Like, maybe somebody hits a baseball into my window and they say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I can say, okay, I forgive you. You don't have to pay for the window. Or I could say, okay, I forgive you, but you still have to pay for the window. Or I could say, oh, I don't forgive you. Like, those are all possible options for me. Uh, God could choose to forgive us and require no payment for the sin. He chose to require some payment, and then he just chose to pay it himself through Jesus Christ. Not just, and one of the benefits of that is we get to see how severe our sin is. Because when you look at the cross, you see that that's what your sin has done. It's killed God. God suffered for you because of your sin. So it inspires us to repent, but also it helps show us the severity of God's love for us and how deep God's love for us is. Because when you look at the cross, you say, wow, he didn't have to do that. He could have just chosen to forgive me at the snap of his fingers. But he chose to do this to pay the debt of justice, to maintain justice in his eternal order, and to show me how much he loves me and how much he cares for me. Just as a pleading, like, I'm not going to force you to accept my forgiveness, but please do accept this offer of forgiveness. And really, it's such a great gift that we have from God, that he's done this for us. So why did Jesus have to die for our sins to be forgiven? Technically he didn't, but he did to show us the severity of our sin and his love for us, because ultimately he doesn't care about keeping an account on some kind of checkbook or whatever, making sure all the spiritual points line up. No, God just cares about his creatures that he's made, and he wants us to be eternally happy with him. So thank you for your time. Please remember to subscribe and like to the channel, comment down your questions below, and have a good one. Bye.